You're looking at a man who tried to take his own life twice. I got sectioned under the Mental Health Act back in 2013 in the UK. I was classed as a danger to myself and the people that I love. And I'm sitting here now, surrounded by a coconut plantation in Thailand, about to tell you a story I was ashamed to tell for many, many years. Because the lowest point of my life was the door that opened everything that I truly desired. So pull up a chair, brother. This one's going to matter. But before we begin, for context, my name is Daniel Constable. I am the South London healer. I'm 40 years old, South London born, dad to my beautiful son Koa, partner to my beautiful wife Katie, living in Koh Samui. And this is healing work for men who weren't raised on it, a little bit like myself. If you're here, I'm guessing you're a man who's built something. Maybe the career, status, image, but underneath something is off and you can't quite fucking name it. Or maybe you can name it, but you've never actually said it out loud. And this channel is going to be for you. Look, I'm not going to give you loads of tips, loads of mindset hacks. There's plenty of that out there. I am, however, going to tell you the truth about what I lived through, what I experienced, and what I learned doing the work, men's work, not the watered down version, from supporting 300 plus men and to 13 years of doing it on myself. And today is the first story I should tell because everything else I'm going to share will sit on top of this. So let me take you back to the beginning. Because to understand how I ended up sectioned in 2013, you have to understand what I was actually carrying. I grew up in Southeast London, and for anyone watching from the UK or from London, you'll know exactly what I mean when I say this. The conditioning was clear from the moment I could walk. Big boys don't cry, man up, pull your socks up. Don't let anyone see weakness. Get on with it. Dust yourself down. And you're probably nodding. You probably heard one of those phrases when you were a child. Now, it wasn't malicious. The people raised me, my fucking parents, they loved me. But they didn't have the language for any of this either. They were just passing down what got passed down to them. School rewarded popularity. Who's leading the way? Who's scoring the goals? Who's the apex? And by the time you got into your 20s, success was measured by how many notches you had on the bedpost, how much you could drink, and how good you were at hiding the fact that you were drowning. My family never talked about trauma. They never talked about pain. If something hard happened, we pretty much swept it under the carpet. Pretended it didn't happen, be grateful for what you have, left it there, didn't unpack it, just parked it, left it on the side of the road and moved on. And as the oldest of two other brothers, the narrative I carried was, you need to be the strong one. Be the example, do not crack. The other two are watching. And I wanted to be that for them, like genuinely. I wanted to be that for them. I wanted to be that big brother archetype. So I learned to bury early. And by the time I was 9, I was actually struggling. I didn't have the word for it then, but it was anxiety. I had anxiety at 9 years old. I felt like I was on the edge all the time, trying to prove to everyone that I was enough, trying to be liked, always one wrong move from being rejected or ostracized by the tribe. Now look, secondary school, I got bullied, and I mean fucking badly. I came home with broken ribs, I came home with bruises I had to hide, I came home with mental abuse, emotional abuse, and I never said a word to anyone. I had my first real dark thought at the age of 13 years old. 13 years old, and I was having dark thoughts. And the conditioning that I just explained was already doing its work. Big boys don't cry, don't speak, be the fucking strong one. So I buried it, I suppressed it, I depressed it, I repressed it. Now, here's what nobody tells you about doing that. What you bury doesn't go away, it just goes underground. And underground, it starts running your life from places you can't see. By the time I was 22, I was in a relationship. I was so desperate to be seen as a success, to tick the box of having a partner, that I picked someone I wanted to fix. Because really, I was trying to fix myself. I just didn't have the awareness for that then. I just had the projection. And she was the mirror of what was broken inside of me. And that relationship ended in domestic violence. Now look, I was on the receiving end of that, and as a man. And the worst part wasn't the violence itself. The worst part was what it did to my sense of being a man. Because the conditioning I grew up in didn't have a box for that. Men aren't supposed to be victims. We're meant to provide. Men aren't supposed to be the ones that get hurt. So I buried that too. So after that relationship, I did what any 22-year-old man with no language and a mountain of buried fucking trauma and pain does. I went on a revenge mission. Pretended to everyone I was fine. Pretended that it hadn't fucked me up. I dealt with it the only way I got taught to deal with my emotional pain. I started drinking. Now, when you start drinking from that place, from the trauma, from the pain, you don't just drink. You build a life around it. I made friends who drank. I kept the friends who drank. The ones who didn't, I drifted from. Then, within about a year, I found a magical drug. It was called cocaine. And cocaine was the magic ingredient. And for the first time in years, I felt enough. I felt confident. I walked into a room, I could speak to women. I could project this version of me that the condition told me I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be the strong one, the confident one. But underneath, I was still 13 years old. I was still being bullied. Still carrying everything I'd never spoken about. Still convinced I was a failure who needed to perform a different man on the outside, the mask. And that's where addiction lives for most people, by the way. It's not a flaw in someone's character. It's a survival strategy for unresolved trauma. It works until it doesn't. And within 3 years, I was a daily user, Monday to Sunday. And I was sliding in a fucking bad way. Then 2013, I took 2 attempts on my own life that year. In January and in May. I'm not going to go into detail. I don't think the detail serves absolutely anyone watching. What matters is what happened around it. After the second attempt, I was on a life support machine. I actually died for 2 minutes, I believe. And a nurse stood over me and over my bed and said to my dad, "This guy, he's a good looking guy. Why is he doing something like this?" And that line always stuck with me. And that says everything about where mental health was 13 years ago. There's an assumption. If you look good on the outside, you're sorted. You can't possibly be in pain on the fucking inside. And most of men watching this know that one. Like, you've lived that one. You're doing well on paper, but drowning underneath. A few days later, I got pulled into a room, and the doctor across from me and my dad, who accompanied me at the time, asked me one question. Are you a danger to yourself, or are you a danger to others? And it was an emphatic yes. I didn't know what I was fucking saying yes to at the time. And that was the day I got sectioned under the Mental Health Act. The first night in that place, I sat in that room. It's not what you see in the films. It's not a white cell. It's a blue mattress. It feels like plastic. The lights pretty much stayed on. There's a window in the door. You're not alone, but you're with people that you know are watching. And on that first night, lying on that blue mattress, I had a conversation with myself. I looked around. I was now locked in with people who had conditions they truly couldn't fucking recover from, right? They had lifelong biological conditions, and I realised something. My condition was actually different. My depression, my trauma, my addiction, the pain I'd suppressed since I was a kid, none of those were biological life sentences. They were the result of what I'd buried. They were actually solvable. Painful, hard, brutal, but actually solvable if I was willing to face them. So in that padded room that night, I had a choice, two paths. Path one, I carried on as I am. I keep drinking, keep using, keep performing the mask to the outside while drowning on the inside. And if I chose that path, eventually I cross over the golden bridge for good. Path two, I choose to be alive. But to be alive, properly alive, I have to face off with everything that I'd suppressed, depressed, and repressed, that I'd buried for over a decade. Every piece of shame, every piece of pain, every piece I've been told a man isn't allowed to feel. That night, thankfully, I chose path two. And I want to be honest with you. Choosing it was probably the easiest part. Walking it, well, that was the fucking hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. Here's what I didn't know that first night, that I know now after 13 years of doing this work. Everything I'd been carrying, the bullying, the relationship, the addiction, the 2 attempts, the sectioning, all of it, none of it was actually a disease. They were symptoms. The disease underneath was one thing: shame. Now, most men confuse shame with guilt. Let me clear it up because the difference matters. Guilt is, I did something bad. Maybe I robbed £10. I gave you the £10 back. I say sorry. And guilt is about behaviour. It can drive repair. It can drive growth. It just doesn't define you. However, shame is different. Shame is, I am fucking bad. I robbed £10 off you, and that means I'm a fucking horrible person, a shit person, worthless, unlovable. Shame isn't about what you did. It's about who you decided you are because of what you did, or what was done to you. I carried that for many years. Shame is the heaviest emotion a human being can carry. More than anger, more than grief, more than your rage, because shame attacks the very thing you are. And shame thrives in 3 places. Secrecy. What we hide grows. The more I kept my addiction quiet, the heavier it got. The more I hid the sectioning, the more powerful it became. Number 2, silence. Shame cannot survive being spoken. The moment it comes out of the dark, it loses its power over you. And then number 3, judgment. Your own judgment is typically the cruelest. Once I stopped making the story mean that I was broken, that I was a piece of shit, it stopped defining me. So there you are. Secrecy, silence, and judgment. That's where shame lives. And as long as it lives there, it runs your life. Let me tell you, when I finally understood this in my body, not just my head, but in my body, I was 34 years old, about 6 years into the real work. And one day I decided I was going to post about this story for the first time publicly on social media. Addiction, mental health, being sectioned, everything I'd kept locked away, all of it. I was gonna share it all. I was absolutely fucking shitting myself. And then I pressed post. I just walked out the house, and it felt like this 8 Mile moment. Do you remember the film with Eminem, 8 Mile? And if you've seen it, in the final rap battle, he goes first, right? And what he does is he raps about everything bad about himself, everything that they could ever throw at him. He says it first, and then he hands the mic over. Or drops the mic, I can't remember. One of the bloody two. It doesn't matter. And it's like, what the fuck can you say back? And that was liberation. And that's what releasing shame feels like. It feels like liberation. It feels like freedom. I took my power back in that moment. They weren't ammunition anymore. They were just facts. I didn't need them to like me anymore, because there was nothing left to hide. And that, brother, that's when real healing started. So if you're watching this and you're carrying something, maybe something big, maybe a stacking of 100 small things stacked on top of each other, and if you've never said any of it out loud, I want you to know 2 things. 1, what you bury runs your life. You think you're managing it, you're not. It's managing you. Every decision you make, every relationship you build, every reason you give yourself for why you can't, why you shouldn't, why you don't deserve, that's the burial talking. That's the shame talking. Number 2, there is a way through. It starts with one micro truth spoken once to a person that you trust who can hold it. You don't have to fix anything. You just have to stop pretending you don't need to. This channel is going to be that conversation. Every video I'm going to bring you is through what I've lived and what I've learned. So that if you're walking the path I walked, you don't have to actually walk it alone. Thanks for being here, and look forward to joining you again soon.